Hi, I'm Dr. Thomas Armstrong, and I'm making a series of short videos to introduce my new book, The Power of Neurodiversity, Unleashing the Advantages of Your Neurodivergent Brain. This is a completely revised and updated second edition of a book that I originally wrote in 2010. The subject of today's video is environmental modifications for people with dyslexia. In my book, The Power of Neurodiversity, I talk about a concept of positive niche construction. This is an idea taken from evolutionary biology, the idea of niche construction. And it's something that we see all the time. It's birds building nests, spiders spinning webs, ants building ant hives, ant hills, bees building beehives, and so on. And what I have done is taken this idea of niche construction and applied it to human ecology, and in particular to neurodivergent individuals. And I have 8 components to positive niche construction, which you see represented here. I've gone over the 8 components in another video that I've done earlier, and I'll probably do more later on, but right now I'm just going to talk about one particular component and then apply it to dyslexia. And that is the component of environmental modifications. Now, when you think of environmental modifications for dyslexia, you might be thinking of the external environment. In other words, just get yourself a nice comfy rocking chair on the porch or next to the fireplace or whatever, and make that your place for reading. And to some extent, that would be a environmental modification. But I want to talk about environmental modifications in a more nitty-gritty way. I want to talk about what the environment a dyslexic person spends most of their time in front of confronting, and that is text. They're stymied by text. And so what can we do to modify the text in such a way that it makes it easier for them to read? Now, this may not help them with decoding skills, with phonemic awareness. All of that needs to be done in a separate facility with a reading remedial specialist or one's own teacher or tutor. And there are computer programs that can do this. There are volunteer programs, etc. But there's this middle area, which is, I call that an environment, and that is the text that the person sits in front of. And so I want to take a look at how we can modify that text in such a way as to make the process of reading easier and more enjoyable. The first thing that rather surprised me was to find that in research, people have discovered that dyslexics read screens better than they read paper. So in a sense, all of our online work and tablets and mobile phones are actually going about presenting text in the right way for people with dyslexia. Now, I am not a text screen kind of a guy when it comes to reading. I am an old-fashioned, I've got to have a book, I've got to be able to write in it, I've got to be able to dog-ear it, and all kinds of things. But this is what the research suggests. So think of screens as a way of mastering a reading assignment or whatever it happens to be. Secondly, we can look at font styles, and that really seems to be an important issue as well. Back in the Middle Ages, people read Latin mostly But the books back then were heavily illustrated or designed, and the process of reading had a strong visual spatial component to it. There's a interesting chapter in the book The Hunchback of Notre Dame by Victor Hugo. The title of the chapter is This Will Kill That. And he's talking about all the stories that are told in the stained glass windows of the cathedrals around France. And he says writing will now kill that. People won't be learning through the stained glass stories anymore. And they'll be learning through the world of words. Well, sure enough, the Gutenberg press came out, I think, in the late 1400s, and standardized print. And the standardization may have been the beginning of the problem of people reading, because without much distinction between the letters, it became harder to differentiate them. I know researchers say that the main problem with dyslexia is phonemic awareness, and I agree with that. But there is this element of visual shapes which can affect one's ability to translate the visual symbols into auditory sounds. You can see what happens when we turn text into capital letters, for example, and how it all seems to blend into each other. There is a group, a company called dyslexicfont.com, Dyslexie, I-E, font.com, that has developed a font that is designed so that these letters can be more easily distinguished. They use slight alterations in letter tilting and baseline variation to make the text look more interesting. This font that you're looking at to describe it is the font that they use. So you can make a determination whether you think that would be an appropriate and an easier way to deal with texts in your life. Now, to illustrate some of the things that we can do to text, I've taken a passage from the internet on William James, the father of American psychology. I just happen to be reading a biography of him right now, and so that was the first thing that occurred to me, so I just popped it up. And so we'll be using that for the most part as we look at different kinds of word processing in the literal sense of the word, processing them, shaping them, stretching them, squeezing them to make them either easier or harder to read. Research suggests that Roman script, as in this Times New Roman script, is actually easier for dyslexics to read than some other scripts like serif or italics. Italics is a very difficult font for some dyslexics. You can see I just went through some of the fonts available on Microsoft Word, and I just picked this one at random. Ravi it's called, and you can kind of get a sense how the shape of a font is going to affect your reading experience. But the neat thing is, with word processing programs like Microsoft Word and Apple products and so forth, we can experiment. If you're dyslexic, you can experiment with fonts and see which ones seem to be easier for you to read. There's a whole list there. I'm not sure how many, maybe 100, 200 fonts, and you can try each one of them out. And with maybe the same passage and see how easy or hard each one is. And so that might be the best advice, rather than to only go by what research says. You can come to your own conclusions through an exploratory process. Another thing we can do with fonts is make them bigger. And so as we make them bigger, there's less on a page to read and therefore less stress for individuals who find reading difficult. Or you can bold it to make it even clearer. Then there's the issue of color. I don't know if you remember back many, many years ago when dinosaurs ruled the plains. No, it was back when I was a teacher in the 1970s. There was a fad, a trend called the Irlen lenses, I-R-L-E-N. And the idea was to use colored transparencies to lay over a student's reading material. And they claimed to have research saying that there were certain colors that worked better than others. And I'm not sure what's happened to that particular movement, but there is research out there suggesting that color can affect one's reading performance. The colors that are recommended tend to be brighter colors like orange or, in this case, yellow. You can put the background as a color, or you can make the letters colored as well. Or you can do some really wild things like doing a sort of an X-ray negative of your text. The colors that seem to be more problematic are the cooler colors, blue and purple and um, green and so forth. And now, if you find that green helps you more than any other color or blue, then by all means go with that, because you're really kind of in charge of your own experience of reading when it comes to choosing how you want to encounter text. So you find out what works best for you. We can also deal with the margins. For some people, wider margins will make for an easier reading experience. For other readers, narrower margins will be better. There's some research suggesting that people with dyslexia have better peripheral vision than neurotypical individuals. So they tend to read more on the outskirts than in the central focal area of the eyes. So that's another thing that you might experiment with. Then there's letter and word intervals. For example, I won't go through the whole process, but you can actually make the distance between words greater or lesser according to using. Now, I would tell you, but I just did it myself and I've forgotten how to do it. But you can just go to online and say how to make words farther apart on Microsoft Word, and they'll give you the directions. Then there's line spaces. You can go to your paragraph section and into the dialog box, and it will allow you to make single space, double space. In this case, I made triple space, and that may make it easier with more distance between words for you to tackle whatever it is that you're reading. Then there's even, for those of you that are finding success in syllabifying words, there's a feature in Microsoft Word that allows you to syllabify. So I've done this with a different text on the history of the US, but by breaking it down into syllables, that might make it easier for some readers to master their reading experience. Then there's the ability to highlight whatever it is that you're reading in different colors. You can also do chunking, taking that text and chunking it into smaller paragraphs and in columns, making it maybe easier to read for some, harder to read for others. You can put bullet points to different sections of the text or number them. So, taking the main facts and numbering them rather than being overwhelmed by, the whole text itself. What do they say? To help individuals who are having trouble learning, you break it down into smaller pieces and then learn those pieces. Now, that doesn't work for everybody, but I think it would be a useful thing in this particular instance. And then finally, I want to mention the text-to-speech feature that is on Microsoft Word, and I assume on most or all word processing programs available out there. And to do this, to access the read aloud function, you see this red circle right here in the middle that says review. So you click review, and that will open up the read aloud function. And so you press the read aloud function, and what will happen will be this sort of very primitive tape recorder kind of assemblage with a play, fast forward, fast reverse, mute kind of thing on it. But when you hit the read aloud function, it should begin to automatically read whatever it is that is on the screen. And then there's the stops button if you want to stop it at any point. So that's essentially a very primitive but very workable text-to-speech software program. So somebody that couldn't even read a single word on this page could access the information through the read aloud function. So that's a little bit about processing text in a way that will make it easier for you to read if you happen to be dyslexic. The information is in my book, The Power of Neurodiversity. I hope you get the book. I hope you share it with your family and friends and therapists and co-workers. You can sign up for my blog posts on my website, either on my homepage or on my blog page. And my URL for that is www.institute4learning.com. That's institute4learning.com. Enter your email address to subscribe, and you will receive my 200-item neurodiversity strengths checklist, which is also from my book. Thanks again for listening, for watching. I hope the information was useful to you, and good luck and best wishes in celebrating neurodiversity and helping each individual fulfill their full potential in life. Thank you so much.